The process is making movies, is creating the illusion, it's kind of like getting to know how a magician does their tricks.
Take that hotel suite scene in Casino. I watched Sharon Stone fall apart, and the camera lingers just long enough to make it hurt. As a professional, watching that raw talent makes you ask one question, and it never really stops echoing in my mind. Why didn't our industry utilize this depth more? If you recognize her name, and you definitely do, you already know the systemic reason why. One project, one scene, 1992. For the general public, her narrative starts and stops right there. But from an insider's perspective, that's completely false. And honestly, it ignores the truly fascinating machinery behind her career. The truth is, she possessed profound acting capability. When we paired her with the right filmmaker and script, she delivered a caliber of work her peers simply could not touch. Our studio system just rarely allowed her to show it. Analyzing why is crucial because it exposes a flaw in how Hollywood manufactures stardom that affects far more than just her. Executives barely mention her now, and frankly, I consider that a failure. Let's look at the dossier. Raised in Meadville, Pennsylvania. Exceptionally sharp kid, reportedly testing around a 154 IQ. She entered Edinburgh University on a scholarship at 15, focusing on creative writing and fine arts. Naturally, our town wouldn't care about those credentials for a very long time. She hit New York modeling for Ford, booking print and commercial spots. Then she made the acting pivot, the exact same pipeline we pushed countless striking young women through during the early 80s. I watched her grind through minor castings for years, a silent extra in a Woody Allen project, King Solomon's Mines. Action Jackson, basic supporting gigs propping up established male leads. We typecast her as the dangerous girl in the corner, the stunning threat, the beautiful woman nobody should trust. Then Paul Verhoeven booked her against Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall back in 1990. Her screen time is roughly 30 minutes, but scanning the dailies, one thing became obvious to us. She was delivering way more depth than the script actually demanded. She fused charm and pure menace into the exact same emotion, executing the character with a clinical precision that industry insiders noticed immediately. The studios noticed her talent, sure, but they instantly decided right then exactly what kind of product she was. Multiple established leads rejected Catherine Trammell. The extreme nudity, the dark material, the Verhoeven reputation. Sharon Stone signed the contract. Basic Instinct exploded into the biggest cultural phenomenon of 1992. A massive financial victory. It polarized the critics and permanently branded her trajectory in a way few single projects ever do. Honestly, her technical performance is far sharper than critics admit. Catherine Trammell was drafted purely as a projection, a blank slate for male anxieties surrounding brilliant sexual women. Yet, Stone navigated that ambiguity masterfully. Her character always completely dominated the room. The production knew exactly what it was doing. It minted her as an international star while simultaneously slapping her with a label she couldn't escape. Dangerous, purely erotic, deeply mysterious, those became her permanent casting constraints. And the Hollywood machine, realizing we had a highly profitable formula on our hands, did what it always does. We relentlessly exploited it. Sliver in 1993. The Specialist in 1994 with Sylvester Stallone. Vehicles engineered entirely around her Basic Instinct brand. We packaged her purely as the beautiful nightmare men desperately wanted. Neither script is structurally sound, giving her zero emotional runway. But beneath the rising fame, the endless press tours, and the massive box office grosses, the industry was actively shrinking her artistic footprint. Her star power grew while the material degraded. You and I need to recognize this specific trap the studio system builds. They keep hiring you, paying you out, elevating your profile, and slowly, your creative options shrink until you're suffocating. But reviewing her private submission logs, you see a fiercely determined professional desperately hunting for scripts that required actual range. That brutal gap between perception and capability is what we study here. But right before Casino hit production, a crucial pivot happened behind the scenes. The Quick and the Dead. A Sam Raimi Western featuring Stone cast as an isolated gunfighter riding into town for a lethal tournament. Gene Hackman, Russell Crowe early on, and a young Leonardo DiCaprio. When Sony executives balked at DiCaprio's casting, she literally covered his salary from her own budget. She stepped up and produced it. The suits refused to back her as the lead, so she bought the rights, forced production, and cast herself. That proves how fiercely she understood her own value. The theatrical run didn't shatter any profit records, but securing that creative control was vital leverage for the massive opportunity that was coming next. Martin Scorsese finally defied all our tired industry rules. He ignored the Predator label, rejecting the trope of the mysterious, dangerous seductress completely. He gave her Ginger McKenna, volatile, beautifully tragic, utterly authentic. A flawed woman fully aware of her high market value, yet crushed by how that valuation imprisoned her. From a purely technical standpoint, her execution in Casino remains her absolute masterpiece. Honestly, it stands out as one of the most brilliant, undervalued supporting achievements of that era. Ginger lacks easy, conventional sympathy. She operates with chaotic, manipulative energy. Yet Stone builds a rich internal psychology that was absolutely not present on the written page. I get completely why De Niro's ace married her, and why he inevitably goes back. Watching those dailies from that hotel suite between the screaming fits, the truth hits you. She crafted a profoundly doomed woman fundamentally incapable of surviving our ruthless ecosystem. She swept the Golden Globe for lead drama. The Academy finally delivered her first and only Oscar nod. Critics handed her the deep, validating respect actors spend 30 grueling years chasing. Yet the scripts my colleagues sent her afterward completely lacked that Casino caliber. Take Last Dance in '96, playing a desperate death row inmate. A seriously disciplined performance met with industry silence. Diabolique that same year. Sphere in '98. Then, The Mighty, also '98. She played a fiercely loyal mother with such grounded warmth that even the toughest studio reviewers had to stop and respect the craft. That performance earned another Golden Globe nomination. But tracking the theatrical run, the project flatlined commercially. The structural pattern here is glaring. Every time she proved her vast emotional range, our industry smiled, nodded, and immediately mailed her another shallow, one-dimensional offer. The terrible distance between her absolute potential and the garbage we actually let her audition for just kept expanding. If you and I share a passion for analyzing these brutal realities behind a Hollywood career, hitting subscribe genuinely keeps this conversation going. It feels like a minor action, but it heavily manipulates the algorithm so our case studies reach more insiders. Let's get back on track. You and I need to examine the whole industry landscape around her, because nobody's career happens in a vacuum. Susan Sarandon spent the 1990s proving talent and career longevity weren't mutually exclusive. 4 Oscar nods that decade, plus a Dead Man Walking win at 48. But agents positioned Sarandon differently. We pitched her as a serious heavyweight who just happened to be gorgeous. We positioned Stone as a total knockout who happened to be a serious actor. That superficial distinction carries massive weight in how studios typecast talent and exactly how long those careers last. Even Meryl Streep, sitting at the absolute pinnacle of our business, struggled to book decent scripts in the early 90s until Bridges of Madison County revived her run at 45. Figuring out which leading roles went to whom was a life or death career question, even for A-listers. Stone hit 43 in 2001. She had a newly adopted infant, Rowan, following 3 tragic miscarriages. She had the massive success of Casino behind her, building a complex but genuinely meaningful cinematic legacy. Then, in September 2001, she suffered a massive stroke, a ruptured vertebral artery. She bled into her brain for 9 straight days before a close friend forced the medical team to re-examine her, allowing them to finally intervene just in time. Her recovery was an absolute nightmare. She could not read for 2 entire years. Memorizing a script, the literal lifeblood of our entire profession, became almost completely impossible for her. She fought vision issues, hearing loss, brutal fatigue, and seizures. The advanced stroke recovery systems we have today simply were not there in 2001. She pushed through mostly alone, lacking the core support systems she desperately needed. She had $18 million locked away. When she finally recovered enough to check her accounts, that fortune was completely gone. Financial managers and insiders had stripped her blind while she was bedridden. She had to remortgage her own home. She told the Hollywood trades years later, "I lost my place in the business. I was like the hottest movie star, and then I had a stroke and I was forgotten." It sounds brutal, but I assure you it is not self-pity. It is fact. Fame in this town has absolutely zero memory. Our industry simply does not hold casting slots for missing actors. While she was offline, the entertainment landscape shifted so aggressively it would have benched healthy stars too. That medical recovery took 7 grueling years. She adopted 2 more boys, Laird in 2005, Quinn in 2006, and anchored her entire world around them. Her comeback vehicle was Basic Instinct 2, which felt incredibly predictable to those of us watching. After Casino, The Stroke, The Exile, The Only Door Producers Opened led straight back to 1992. It was a complete commercial disaster. The picture had spent years trapped in litigation and development. Critics absolutely trashed it. The studio lost millions on the budget, but it showed us something incredibly important. When studio heads pictured Sharon Stone, they only saw the femme fatale. Then, in 2004, she pulled off something nobody talks about, a brilliant guest spot on The Practice. Just 1 hour of television. She swept the Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Guest Actress in a Drama. Her single career Emmy earned off just 1 killer script. It did not suddenly fix her casting sheets, but it proved to talent agents exactly what she could deliver if someone actually bothered to look. She kept grinding, turning in quiet performances that proved to anyone paying attention that she never lost her acting chops. Take Broken Flowers in 2005, that Jim Jarmusch indie flick starring Bill Murray. Stone tackled a working-class widow role, half hippie, half tough. A totally minor part. She is visible for maybe 15 minutes. Reviewers realized that with a solid script, she was not just watchable, but remarkably sharp and hilarious. A stark reminder of a theatrical range our industry completely failed to exploit. Then came Alpha Dog in 2006. She played a destroyed mother, showing a raw, unguarded vulnerability that her glamorous 90s contracts absolutely never required from her. Steven Soderbergh cast her in Mosaic in 2018, a crime drama featuring Stone leading as a wildly eccentric children's book illustrator. The press raved, handing her a Satellite Award for Supporting Actress. Critics who completely wrote her off were suddenly taking a serious second look. Let's look at the pattern together. Whenever casting directors handed her quality material, she delivered. She has openly discussed rebuilding her ruined finances, shooting modeling campaigns into her 50s, taking basic commercial gigs she never would have needed if that stroke hadn't wiped her entire financial slate clean. She discusses her exile without an ounce of industry bitterness. Honestly, that shows either unbelievable professionalism or just the grounded peace of surviving the absolute worst this business throws at you. She is a serious painter now, displaying in major Berlin galleries. She raised 3 boys. She is even pitching agencies about finally tackling live theater. She sounds exactly like someone who forged a rock-solid reality from a life derailed more aggressively than most. But what haunts me as an agent looking at her resume is not failure. Not even close. She enjoyed a legendary box office run in the early 90s that most actors would kill for. She anchored massive hits, and her profoundly complex work in Casino demands a permanent spot in any elite conversation about raw cinematic acting during that specific era of film history. The studio executives found a version of Sharon Stone they could package. They sold it repeatedly for massive profits. Yet whenever she proved her phenomenal range, whether headlining Casino, shooting The Mighty, or dominating that single episode of The Practice, executives offered her empty praise instead of diverse scripts. A shiny Golden Globe, glowing industry write-ups, and then strictly more typecast offers. The hemorrhage obviously accelerated her decline. 7 years is a brutal absence from Hollywood, but screening Casino today, truly studying her technique, breaking down that hotel suite masterclass, I always wonder what her trajectory looks like if studio offers actually matched her immense talent. Maybe that is the real thread connecting these industry files. It is not just about what happens when a star's career halts, but what happens when a single performance hits so hard, becoming such a cultural juggernaut, that casting directors secretly use it to measure every single tape you ever submit again. You and I are going to study another actor next who knows that trap intimately. A breakout role that did not just launch a massive career, it built a concrete ceiling. But we will table that meeting. Sharon Stone is currently 68, painting daily, raising her boys. She booked Nobody 2 last year and snagged a spot on HBO's Euphoria. Word around town is she is entirely at peace with a journey that taxed her harder than anyone deserves. As for whether Hollywood ever actually understood the weapon they possessed, I highly doubt it. But Casino remains a true masterclass. If you haven't studied its execution lately, trust me, it demands another look. As always, I genuinely look forward to breaking down the next one with you.